The rain arrived first. Sheets of water slammed against the emergency department entrance, turning the ambulance bay into a blur of flashing red and blue lights. Inside St. Gabriel Medical Center, the evening shift had settled into its usual rhythm. Monitors chimed. Phones rang. Stretchers rolled through polished corridors. At the nurse's station, Claire Donovan signed the last page of a patient's discharge paperwork before handing the chart to the unit clerk. "Room 12 is ready," she said. The clerk nodded. "Thanks, Claire." Before she could take another step, the overhead speaker cracked to life. "Level 1 trauma, ETA 1 minute, motor vehicle collision, adult male, severe blunt force injuries." The department transformed instantly. Conversation stopped. Trauma doors swung open. Respiratory therapists rushed toward Bay 3. A resident grabbed an ultrasound machine. Dr. Nathan Carter, the attending trauma surgeon, snapped on a pair of gloves. Everyone knows their roles. No shouting, no panic, just practiced precision. Claire wasn't assigned to the incoming trauma. She stepped aside, making room as the team assembled. Outside, an ambulance rounded the corner so fast its tires hissed across the soaked pavement. The rear doors burst open before it had fully stopped. 2 paramedics jumped out. "Soaked male, approximately 38. High-speed collision, progressive hypotension." As they pulled the stretcher toward the entrance, a powerful Belgian Malinois leapt from the back of the ambulance. A military police sergeant caught the leash before the dog could run. "Easy, Ranger." The dog ignored him. His eyes weren't on the stretcher. They weren't on the doctors. They were searching. Quick, focused, urgent. Captain Ethan Brooks lay motionless beneath an oxygen mask. His uniform had already been cut open across the chest. Blood soaked the right side of his tactical shirt. One paramedic continued the report while walking. "Restrained driver, airbags deployed, loss of consciousness approximately 12 minutes, blood pressure dropping despite fluids." Dr. Carter nodded. "Straight to Bay 3. The doors slid open. The trauma team took over. "On my count. 1, 2, 3. Ethan was transferred onto the hospital bed. Monitors came alive. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. The familiar orchestra of emergency medicine filled the room. Meanwhile, Sergeant Ramirez tightened his grip on Ranger's leash. "Stay." For 1 second, the dog obeyed. Then his head lifted sharply, his ears locked forward, his breathing changed. Ramirez felt it before he saw it. "Ranger?" The dog wasn't looking at Ethan anymore. He was staring across the emergency department, at someone else. Claire. She had just picked up a box of sterile gloves. She hadn't even looked toward the trauma room yet. The Malinois pulled once, hard. Ramirez dug in his boots. Not now. The leash stretched tight. Ranger never barked. He simply kept staring. Claire sensed someone watching her. She turned. Across the department, a pair of intelligent brown eyes met hers. For the briefest moment, everything around them seemed to disappear. Neither moved. Then, Ranger did something that made Ramirez's stomach drop. He lowered his body, not into an attack posture, into a working posture, the posture he used before beginning a trained task. Ramirez whispered, "What are you doing?" With one sudden twist, Ranger slipped backward out of his rain-soaked tactical collar. The empty collar remained in Ramirez's hand. The dog sprinted across the emergency department. "Security!" Several people instinctively stepped aside. A visitor gasped. A nurse reached for the wall alarm. Claire didn't move. Ranger stopped less than a meter in front of her. He wasn't barking. He wasn't jumping. He simply looked up at her, waiting. The security officer reached them first. "Ma'am, step back." Claire raised one hand. "Wait." The officer hesitated. Ranger never took his eyes off Claire. His breathing was rapid, controlled, expectant. Claire slowly crouched, not because she trusted him, because she wanted him to trust her. "Easy," she said quietly. The effect was immediate. Ranger's breathing slowed, his shoulders relaxed, his tail remained still. Sergeant Ramirez finally caught up, visibly shaken. "I've worked with him for 6 years." His voice was filled with disbelief. "I've never seen him leave Captain Brooks." Claire kept her eyes on the dog. "What happened?" Ramirez swallowed. "The captain's vehicle was hit by a truck. We've been together since the scene. He hasn't let anyone near him." He looked at Ranger. "Until now." Claire reached out slowly. The dog didn't move. Her fingertips brushed the side of his neck. His eyes never left hers. Then, without warning, Ranger turned. He looked toward Trauma Bay 3, not at Ethan, not at the doctors, at the doorway. He took 3 slow steps down toward the doorway, stopped, looked back at Claire, not pleading, not frightened, waiting. Claire remained where she was. The dog didn't continue. He simply stood there, watching her, as though the next move belonged to her. From inside the trauma bay came Dr. Carter's calm voice. "Blood pressure is falling. Let's repeat the fast exam." Claire looked from the doorway back to the dog. Something about his behavior felt impossible to explain. He wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't trying to reach his handler. He was asking for her. Claire took a single step toward the trauma bay. Ranger immediately turned and continued walking. She stopped. So did he. The security officer frowned. "He's matching you." Claire felt a chill she couldn't explain. She took another step. Again, Ranger moved, always just ahead of her, never pulling away, never looking back for anyone else. Only her. Dr. Carter glanced up as Claire entered the trauma bay with the dog quietly at her side. He looked at the security officer. "Problem?" Before anyone could answer, Claire looked at Ranger, then at Dr. Carter. Her voice was calm, measured, but there was something unmistakable in it. "Doctor?" She paused. "I don't think he's trying to stay with his handler." Dr. Carter looked at the dog. "What do you think he's trying to do?" Claire met Ranger's eyes one more time, then answered. I think he's trying to show us something." Dr. Nathan Carter didn't answer immediately. He looked from Claire to the Belgian Malinois standing quietly beside her, then back to the patient. Years in trauma surgery had taught him one rule above all others: never ignore new information, even when it arrived in an unusual form. "Ramirez," he said calmly, "can you control him if he stays?" Sergeant Luis Ramirez clipped a backup lead onto Ranger's harness. "He won't leave my side." He glanced at Claire. "Or hers." Dr. Carter nodded once. "Fine, but if he interferes, he's out. No exceptions." Claire gave a grateful nod. "Understood." The dog didn't move. He simply sat beside her, eyes fixed on Ethan. Inside the trauma bay, the team continued their assessment. The rhythm was almost mechanical. Blood pressure, 86/50. Heart rate, 140. Repeat fast exam. The ultrasound probe glided across Ethan's abdomen. No free fluid. Dr. Carter nodded. Lungs. Another physician checked. No pneumothorax. The portable chest X-ray appeared seconds later. Multiple rib fractures. Pulmonary contusion. Exactly what they expected. The visible injuries explained almost everything. Almost. Claire watched quietly from the corner. She had no reason to interrupt. The team was doing exactly what she would expect any experienced trauma service to do. Then Ranger stood. Not suddenly, deliberately. His head turned toward Ethan's right side. Not one specific spot. Not yet. He watched as a nurse reached across Ethan's body to adjust a blood pressure cuff. His ears flicked, then settled. Claire noticed. The dog wasn't staring at the injury. He was watching every person who touched Ethan, almost as though he were evaluating them. Ramirez leaned closer. I've never seen him work like this. Claire kept watching. What does he normally do? Explosives, tracking, building searches. He swallowed. When Captain Brooks gets hurt, Ramirez's voice softened. He never leaves him. Claire glanced at Ranger. Today, he did. Ramirez nodded. That's what scares me. Another alarm sounded. Precious drifting. 82 systolic. Dr. Carter remained composed. Increase blood. Let's repeat his neurological exam. A resident checked Ethan's pupils. Equal. Reactive. Still unresponsive. Everything fit. Nothing looked unusual. Claire exhaled quietly. Maybe the dog had simply wanted someone calm nearby. Maybe she was reading too much into this. She started toward the door. Behind her, Ranger moved. Not toward Ethan, toward Claire. He gently blocked her path. Not aggressively. He simply stood in front of her, waiting. Claire stopped. So, you don't want me leaving. Ramirez watched carefully. He doesn't block people, only suspects. Claire smiled faintly. I don't think he believes I'm a suspect. For the first time that evening, Ramirez laughed. Neither noticed that Ranger had already turned away. He wasn't looking at Claire anymore. He was watching Ethan's monitor. The heartbeat remained fast. The blood pressure slowly fell. The dog tilted his head, listening, not to the machine, to the room. Dr. Carter looked around. We're stabilizing him, but something's still driving the hypotension. The resident answered. Chest trauma, blood loss, possible inflammatory response. Reasonable, Dr. Carter agreed. But I don't like possible. He studied the monitor again. I want another full head-to-toe assessment. No one objected. In trauma medicine, patients changed, sometimes minute by minute. Missing something wasn't incompetence, it was exactly why reassessments existed. As the nurses carefully repositioned Ethan, Claire saw Ranger become perfectly still. Not tense, focused. His gaze followed Ethan's right arm as it shifted across the mattress. For the first time, Claire noticed something odd. Not an injury, a hesitation. Whenever someone moved that arm, Ranger's breathing changed, slightly, faster. Whenever they stopped, he relaxed. Once, could be coincidence. Twice, interesting. 3 times, a pattern. Claire walked closer. Doctor? Dr. Carter looked over. What did you notice? I don't know yet. She pointed toward Ethan's arm. May I watch while you move his shoulder again? The resident looked puzzled. Looking for what? Claire answered honestly. I'll know when I see it. Dr. Carter didn't dismiss her. Instead, he nodded. Go ahead. The resident carefully supported Ethan's injured arm. Only a few centimeters. Nothing dramatic. The instant the shoulder shifted, Ranger stood. Not barking, not whining. His eyes locked on Ethan. His breathing became rapid. Then, as soon as the arm was lowered, he relaxed again. Claire frowned. Again. The resident repeated the movement. Exactly the same response. Ranger stood, watched, waited. The arm settled. The dog relaxed. Claire looked at Dr. Carter. He isn't reacting to pain. Dr. Carter folded his arms. What do you mean? If it were pain, he'd react whenever Ethan moved. She looked at Ranger. But he's reacting when we move him. Ramirez frowned. So what? Claire walked to Ethan's bedside. She studied the shoulder more carefully this time. No obvious deformity, no heavy bleeding, no bleeding that demanded immediate attention. Yet Ranger's reaction had been identical every single time. Dr. Carter stepped beside her. What are you thinking? Claire kept her eyes on Ethan. I think, she paused. Ranger isn't protecting Ethan from us. Dr. Carter waited. Claire looked at the dog. I think he's trying to stop us from moving something. The room fell silent. No one argued. No one agreed. Because at that moment, no one knew whether Ranger was communicating or whether they were simply trying to make sense of extraordinary behavior. But for the first time, the question wasn't, why did the dog choose Claire? It had become something much more dangerous. What had the dog noticed that no one else had? No one spoke for several seconds. The only sounds in Trauma Bay 3 were the steady beeps of cardiac monitors and the hiss of oxygen flowing through Ethan's mask. Dr. Nathan Carter looked at Claire. What do you need? It wasn't blind trust. It was the question experienced physicians asked when something didn't fit. Claire answered honestly. I need another minute. Dr. Carter checked the monitor. Ethan's blood pressure had stabilized. Barely. 84/50. He nodded. You have 60 seconds. The trauma team continued working while Claire stepped closer to the bed. She didn't look at Ranger. Not yet. If she kept watching the dog, she'd start seeing patterns that weren't there. Instead, she watched Ethan. She placed 2 fingers on his left wrist. A strong radial pulse. Regular. She moved to the right wrist. Nothing. She frowned. She tried again. Still nothing. Maybe she was in the wrong position. She adjusted her fingers. Silence. No pulse. Claire looked up. Dr. Carter. He immediately crossed the room. What is it? I can't feel a right radial pulse. The resident beside him spoke first. Could just be vasoconstriction from shock. Could be, Claire agreed, but I'd like someone else to check. Without a word, Dr. Carter reached for Ethan's wrist. His expression remained calm. Then, it changed. He checked again, longer this time. The room seemed to hold its breath. I don't have one either. The resident stepped forward. He palpated both wrists. Left, strong. Right, nothing. His eyebrows lifted. That's strange. Dr. Carter didn't waste a second. Doppler. A nurse was already opening the vascular kit. Within moments, ultrasound gel covered Ethan's wrist. The Doppler probes searched for arterial flow. The speaker remained silent. The technician adjusted the angle. Still nothing. She looked up. No Doppler signal. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Not panic. Focus. Dr. Carter's voice became sharper. Compare brachial. The probe moved higher. A faint signal. Weak. Intermittent. He looked at Claire. When did you notice this? She glanced toward Ranger. He kept reacting every time we repositioned the shoulder. Dr. Carter didn't look at the dog. He looked at Ethan. Expose the clavicle. A nurse folded the blanket lower. The shoulder looked almost normal. A few abrasions, developing bruising. Nothing dramatic. The vascular surgeon, Dr. Priya Shah, entered just as the examination continued. What have we got? Dr. Carter answered without looking away. Absent radial pulse, chest trauma, unexplained hypotension. She stepped beside him immediately. Ultrasound. The probe moved beneath Ethan's collarbone. The image flickered onto the screen. gray tissue, dark vessels. Then, Dr. Shah leaned closer. Freeze. The technician stopped the image. She adjusted the probe by only a few millimeters. The vessel appeared again, then disappeared. Dr. Shah quietly said, "Run color Doppler." Blue and red filled the screen until they didn't. A section of the artery simply stopped. No flow. Dr. Shah's face hardened. There. Dr. Carter leaned closer. Axillary artery. Looks like partially torn. The resident stared at the monitor. I didn't even think. Dr. Shah finished the sentence. Because it's rare. She straightened. The ribs distracted us. The chest injury explained almost everything. She looked at Claire. This, she pointed toward the screen, explains the rest. The blood pressure alarm sounded again. 80/44. Dr. Shah turned instantly. We're going to surgery. She looked directly at Dr. Carter. If that tear extends, we lose him. Nobody needed more explanation. The room erupted into motion. As nurses prepared Ethan for transport, Claire finally looked at Ranger. The dog hadn't moved. He wasn't watching her anymore. He wasn't watching the monitors. His eyes rested quietly on Ethan, almost as though he'd been waiting for this moment. Claire crouched beside him. Was this what you were trying to tell us? Ranger looked at her. His breathing slowed. Then, for the first time since arriving at the hospital, he lowered his head and rested it gently against the side of the bed. Sergeant Luis Ramirez watched in silence. I've seen him find buried explosives. I've seen him track people through forests. He shook his head slowly. But I've never... His voice trailed away. Claire stood. You have? Ramirez looked confused. What? You've seen him refuse to give up. She looked toward Ethan. He wasn't asking us to believe he knew medicine. He was asking us to believe that something was still wrong. Dr. Carter overheard her as he pulled on a fresh pair of gloves. He gave one short nod. Good instincts don't replace evidence. He glanced toward the ultrasound monitor. But sometimes, there would lead you to look for it. Claire gave a quiet nod. She appreciated that answer. No miracles, no magic, just observation, then evidence, then action. The order every good clinician respected. The transport team unlocked the stretcher. The operating room had been alerted. The route was clear. As Ethan's bed began rolling toward the doors, Ranger rose to his feet. Not hurried, not frantic, simply determined. He took his place beside the stretcher, one step behind Ethan, one step beside Claire. The journey to the operating room had begun. The operating room was 2 corridors away. In trauma medicine, that wasn't far. But for a patient with a major vascular injury, it could be the longest journey of their life. Clear the hallway! The transport team moved quickly, but never ran. One nurse squeezed another unit of blood through the pressure infuser. The anesthesiologist walked at Ethan's head, monitoring his airway. Dr. Priya Shah stayed beside the stretcher, already planning the operation. We'll expose the axillary artery first. If the tear has propagated... She didn't finish. Everyone knew the consequences. Claire walked just behind Ethan's right shoulder. Ranger matched her pace perfectly. No leash, no commands. Sergeant Luis Ramirez stayed beside him, close enough to intervene if needed. Hospital security followed several meters behind, not relaxed, watching. One wrong move, and the dog would be removed. The elevator doors slid open. Everyone stepped inside. The space suddenly felt much smaller. Monitors beeped steadily. The blood pressure cycled again. 79/42. The anesthesiologist frowned. Pressure slipping. Another unit. The nurse adjusted the transfusion. Claire glanced at Ethan's face. He hadn't moved since leaving the trauma bay. Ranger hadn't looked away from him once. Halfway to the surgical floor, the cardiac monitor emitted a different tone, not faster, irregular. Everyone looked. The rhythm corrected itself almost immediately. The anesthesiologist exhaled. Whew, probably for movement. The elevator doors opened. The team rolled out. Ranger followed. Then, without warning, he stopped. Not for a second, completely. His paws locked against the polished floor. Ramirez gave a gentle tug. Come on. Nothing. The dog wasn't resisting. He was staring at Ethan. Claire noticed something else. Ranger's ears had flattened, not in fear, in concentration. She stepped beside him. What is it? He didn't look at her. His eyes remained fixed on Ethan's right arm. Claire followed his gaze. The blood pressure cuff had slipped lower during transport. A nurse reached over to reposition it. The moment Ethan's shoulder shifted, Ranger let out the first sound he'd made since arriving. A single, low, urgent whine. Everyone froze. Dr. Shaw looked back. What happened? No idea, Ramirez answered. He never vocalizes while working. Claire's eyes stayed on Ethan. Stop! The transport team halted instantly. Dr. Shaw looked at her. What did you see? I don't know yet, but something changed. The anesthesiologist checked the monitor. Pressure 74, heart rate climbing. Claire gently placed 2 fingers on Ethan's right wrist. Nothing. She wasn't surprised. Then she looked higher. The dressing over Ethan's shoulder had shifted, only slightly, but enough to reveal fresh swelling beneath the collarbone. She pressed lightly around the edge of the dressing. Soft, tense, different from 5 minutes ago. Dr. Shaw stepped closer. That's expanding. Claire looked up immediately. It's getting worse. Dr. Shaw's expression sharpened. We're not moving him. She turned toward the nurse. Portable ultrasound. Here. The resident looked confused. Here? Now. Within seconds, the ultrasound machine arrived. The probe touched Ethan's shoulder. Everyone watched the screen. The collection around the artery had grown. Small, but unmistakable. Dr. Shaw nodded once. The hematoma's expanding. She looked at Claire. If we'd continued rolling, Claire finished the thought. We might have completed the tear. Dr. Shaw didn't disagree. Instead, she adjusted the plan. We stabilize him here, then we move. Orders changed instantly. Blood products increased. Additional pressure support began. The anesthesiologist corrected Ethan's blood pressure before transport resumed. No one complained about the delay, because everyone now understood. Stopping probably bought Ethan the minutes he needed. Ramirez looked down at Ranger. You felt that? He shook his head in disbelief. Didn't you? Ranger simply sat beside Ethan, watching, waiting. Claire knelt beside him. For the first time, she noticed a tiny white scar just above his left eyebrow. Small, easy to miss. Something about it tugged at the edge of her memory. A mountain, dust, a helicopter rotor, someone laughing, then nothing. The memory vanished before she could grasp it. She frowned. Have we met before? Ranger looked into her eyes, his head tilted slightly, as if he'd been waiting for her to ask. Before Claire could think any further, Dr. Shaw called out, We're moving. This time, Ranger walked without hesitation, not because someone commanded him, because at last, Ethan was stable enough to continue. As the operating room doors came into view, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the dog wasn't guiding her anymore. He was waiting for her to remember. The operating room doors burst open. Vascular team ready. Patient coming through. The surgical staff took over with practiced precision. A circulating nurse stepped towards Sergeant Luis Ramirez. I'm sorry, Sergeant. The dog can't go any farther. Ramirez nodded. I understand. He clipped the leash onto Ranger's harness. The Malinois didn't resist. He simply watched Ethan disappear through the doors. Then the doors closed. The red surgery in progress light illuminated. For the first time that night, Ranger had nothing to do. He lay down directly in front of the operating room. Not pacing, not whining. Waiting. Claire stood nearby watching him. Nearly 4 hours had passed since the ambulance arrived. Adrenaline had faded. Exhaustion was beginning to replace it. Ramirez walked over with a bottle of water. "You should sit." Claire smiled politely. "I've forgotten how." He laughed softly. "So has he." He looked down at Ranger. "I've seen him wait like this before." Claire looked at him. "When?" Ramirez shrugged. "Whenever Captain Brooks went somewhere he couldn't follow. Medical exams, physical therapy, briefings, he always waited at the last place he'd seen him." Claire looked at Ranger again. "He trusts he'll come back." Ramirez nodded. "Every time." A maintenance cart rattled down the hallway. Its loose wheel made a sharp metallic clatter. Ranger's ears snapped upright. Claire noticed immediately, not because of the noise, because of the way he reacted. His body shifted into working stance, focused, alert. Then, just as quickly, he relaxed. Claire frowned. That posture, she'd seen it before. Somewhere years ago. The image flashed across her mind and disappeared before she could grasp it. The operating room doors remained closed. Ramirez broke the silence. "You know, when Ranger first started working, he wouldn't listen to anyone." Claire smiled. "I've met a few people like that." Ramirez chuckled. "The trainers almost failed him." "What changed?" "There was one medic. He got injured during an overseas deployment. He trusted almost nobody after that." Claire looked down the hallway. "What did the medic do?" Ramirez shrugged. "Nobody ever told me. They just said he came back different." Claire stared at Ranger. Without thinking, she quietly knelt beside him. His breathing remained slow, steady. She reached toward his shoulder, not to pet him, just to reassure him. The moment her hand touched his harness, words escaped her mouth before she realized she was speaking. "Eyes on me." Her own voice startled her. She hadn't planned to say it. "Steady." Ranger's head lifted instantly. His ears relaxed, his eyes locked onto hers. Claire froze. That response, it wasn't random. She heard herself continue, softly, as though someone else were speaking through memory. "Good. Now breathe." Ranger slowly exhaled. His entire body relaxed. Ramirez stared. "What did you just say?" Claire blinked. I don't know. Those words just..." She stopped, because they hadn't just come. They had come from somewhere. A helicopter passed over the hospital's rooftop. Its rodders thumped through the building. The sound hit Claire like a wave. Not because helicopters were unusual, because the rhythm matched another helicopter, another night, another storm, another life. A battlefield, dark mountains, rain, a soldier trapped beneath twisted metal, a young Belgian Malinois snarling at everyone who approached, a younger Claire kneeling in the mud, removing one glove, looking straight into frightened brown eyes. "Eyes on me." The dog stopped growling. "Steady." His breathing slowed. "Good. Now breathe." The memory disappeared. Claire opened her eyes. Ranger was still looking at her, exactly the same way. Not with curiosity, with recognition. Her voice trembled. "You remember." His tail tapped the floor once, just once. Not excitement, recognition. Ramirez looked between them. "What is it?" Claire swallowed. "I've said those words before." "When?" She slowly shook her head. "I don't remember everything, but I remember him. Not his name, not the mission, just him. The trust, the fear, the moment a frightened military dog had decided she was safe." The operating room doors opened. Dr. Priya Shah stepped into the hallway, removing her surgical gloves. Ramirez stood immediately. "How is he?" A tired smile crossed her face. "The repair held. We restored blood flow. He's going to recover." Ramirez let out a long breath. Claire closed her eyes in relief. Dr. Shah looked at Claire. "I was told you insisted on checking his pulse." Claire shook her head. "I insisted on listening." Dr. Shah smiled. "Whatever you listened to, it saved his life." Claire looked toward Ranger. He was already standing, watching the recovery room doors, waiting. Not because he knew surgery was over, because somehow he always knew when Ethan needed him. And this time, Claire was beginning to remember why. 4 hours later, the red surgery in progress light finally went dark. The operating room doors opened. Dr. Priya Shah stepped into the corridor, pulling off her surgical cap. Sergeant Luis Ramirez was already on his feet. So, Dr. Shah smiled for the first time that night. "We repaired the artery. The graft is flowing well. He lost a lot of blood, but he's going to make it." Ramirez closed his eyes for a brief moment. "Thank you." Behind him, Ranger didn't bark, he didn't jump. He simply stood, watching the surgeon, watching the doors, waiting for the only answer that mattered. "The anesthetic will wear off in a couple of hours," Dr. Shaw continued. "We'll move him to ICU." She looked toward Claire. "I also owe you an apology." Claire frowned. "For what?" "When you first asked us to slow down, I thought you were following instinct." Claire smiled gently. "I was." Dr. Shaw nodded. "But you verified it." She extended a hand. "That's good medicine." Claire shook it. It was a team effort. Dr. Shaw glanced at Ranger. "A very unusual team." An hour later, the ICU lights were lower. The frantic rhythm of the trauma bay had been replaced by quiet conversations and steady monitors. Ethan Brooks lay asleep beneath a warmed blanket. His color had returned. His blood pressure was stable. The ventilator was gone. Only a nasal cannula remained. Outside the room, Sergeant Ramirez clipped Ranger's leash to his harness. "You get 5 minutes." The ICU charge nurse smiled. "Hospital administration says that's all we can officially approve." Ramirez grinned. "I think he'll make good use of them." Claire looked at the charge nurse. "Thank you." She shrugged. "After tonight, I don't think anyone wanted to tell him no." The ICU door opened. Ranger walked in quietly. No pulling, no rushing. He crossed the room with the confidence of someone who already knew exactly where he belonged. He stopped beside Ethan's bed, lowered his head, and waited. Several long seconds passed. Then, Ethan's fingers moved. Almost instinctively, his hand reached toward the edge of the bed. Without opening his eyes, it found Ranger's head. His fingers rested in the dog's fur. The monitor never changed. No dramatic music, no emotional speech. Just one soldier unconsciously reaching for the partner who had never left him. Claire watched from the doorway. Ramirez quietly wiped a tear from his cheek. "I've seen that after every deployment," he whispered. "He always checks for Ranger first." A few minutes later, Ethan's eyelids slowly opened. Everything was blurry. The ceiling, the lights, the machines. Then his focus settled. First, on Ranger. A tired smile appeared. "You waited." Ranger's tail tapped the floor once. Then Ethan looked toward the doorway. His expression changed. He blinked, as though trying to convince himself he wasn't imagining things. Claire stepped closer. "Welcome back, Captain." He stared at her for several seconds. Something in his expression shifted. Not recognition, memory. Like hearing a familiar song without remembering where he'd heard it. He spoke quietly. "Have we met?" Claire smiled. "I was wondering the same thing." He was confused. "I know your voice." She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to Ranger, knelt beside him, rested one hand gently beneath his chin. Then, almost without thinking, she said, "Eyes on me." Ranger looked at her instantly. steady. His breathing slowed. Good. Now breathe. Silence filled the room. Ethan's eyes widened. His heart rate rose slightly on the monitor. "No," he whispered. Claire looked at him. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No way." He looked at Ranger, then back at Claire. "Copper Ridge." Claire frowned. The name struck her like lightning. A mountain valley, cold rain, rotor wash, smoke. A young captain trapped beneath the twisted frame of an armored vehicle. A terrified military dog refusing to let anyone near him. A young combat medic kneeling in the mud, removing one glove, speaking softly. "Eyes on me. Steady. Good. Now breathe." The dog stepped aside, just enough. Enough for the medic to reach the wounded soldier. The memory ended. Claire inhaled sharply. "I remember." Ethan smiled despite the pain. "You wouldn't leave until both of us were on the helicopter." Claire laughed quietly. "You argued with me. You wanted Ranger evacuated first. I did. You threatened to sedate me. I almost did." Ramirez looked between them in complete disbelief. "That was you?" Claire nodded. "I never knew your names. They transferred me before I heard what happened." Ethan looked at Ranger. He remembered. Claire rested her forehead gently against Ranger's. "No," she smiled. "He reminded me." The next morning, Dr. Carter walked through the ICU during rounds. He stopped outside Ethan's room. Inside, Ethan was awake. Claire was adjusting an IV pump. Ranger slept peacefully at the foot of the bed under a temporary therapy animal exemption approved overnight by hospital administration. Dr. Carter smiled to himself. Medicine had saved Ethan's life, but medicine alone hadn't started the chain of events. Observation had. Trust had. A dog had refused to ignore that something was wrong. A nurse had refused to ignore what the dog was trying to say. Neither could have done it alone. 3 days later, the rain was gone. Sunlight spilled across the hospital entrance, where the same ambulance bay had been filled with chaos. Ethan walked slowly toward a waiting military vehicle. His right arm rested in a sling. Ramirez held the passenger door open. Ranger waited beside him. Before climbing in, Ethan turned back. Claire had come out between patients to say goodbye. He walked over, stopped in front of her. "You know, when Ranger slipped his collar, I already knew where he'd gone." Claire smiled. "You did?" Ethan nodded. "I didn't know if you'd still be here, but I knew. If there was anyone who'd make him leave my side, it would be you." Claire looked at the old Malinois. He calmly returned her gaze. Not searching anymore, not asking, simply content. She scratched behind his ear one last time. "You did your job." Ranger leaned gently into her hand, then turned back to Ethan. Together, soldier and dog walked toward the vehicle. Claire watched until they disappeared beyond the hospital gates. Her pager vibrated. Trauma team to Bay 2. Another emergency, another family, another life waiting to be changed. She turned, walked back through the sliding doors, and disappeared into the hospital, exactly where Ranger knew she would always be.